I am Lauren Apter Bairnsfather, director of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh. The Holocaust Center connects the horrors of anti-Semitism and the Holocaust with injustices of today. Through education, we empower individuals to build a more civil and humane society, and that is what we're doing tonight. Zach Banner brings us together this evening. But this event really is several years in the making and is a dream come true. It's the hope that emanates from the Tree of Life. After the attack on October 27, 2018, in every city across the United States, Jewish communities held vigils in support of us. While inside Pittsburgh, we saw something miraculous happen. The entire city circled around us and supported us, and the experience changed this city and the people in it. And tonight, I welcome all of you near and far to become part of our story. The event that we're doing right now has been the target of virulent attacks on social media over the last couple of days, including questions about the composition of the panel. These attacks were meant to pressure us to cancel tonight's program, and we're not participating in cancel culture. We're talking about anti-Semitism and racism. So what is anti-Semitism? In brief, it is hostility to or prejudice against the Jewish people, and this may include criticism of Israel, support for BDS, and using the term apartheid in reference to Israel. Anti-Semitism is often difficult to identify, on the other hand, because it's everywhere. The thought leader Eric Ward, fellow at the Southern Poverty Law Center and head of the Western State Center, was asked if anti-Semitism is at the core of white nationalism. He responded, "Anti-Semitism is the core of white nationalism." So how does it connect to racism? We'll define that too, because I want us to know what we're talking about and be talking about the same thing in this program tonight. So racism is discrimination based on race, and race has no scientific basis, but nevertheless provides the structure of society in the United States. So while race scientifically does not exist, racism surely does. And if you doubt that racism and anti-Semitism are connected, you need only look at photographs from the attack on the Capitol January 6th. The Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt, and the man with the Confederate flag. The European Jewish experience in the United States is not analogous to the African American experience. Yet we have at many times in history shared neighborhoods, like the Hill District in Pittsburgh, where my grandfather was born and raised, and we have shared struggles for justice. So what are the obstacles we face in Black and Jewish communities working together? The author James Baldwin of blessed memory, the posthumous prophet of a year of Black Lives Matter protests, wrote an article in the New York Times, April 9th, 1967. It was called, "Negroes are anti-Semitic because they are anti-white." If you had not read this article, read it. It's easily available online. And I share this with the caveat that 10% of Jews in the United States are not white, and we can't forget that. Baldwin wrote in this article, "A genuinely candid confrontation between American Negroes and American Jews would certainly prove of inestimable value." We come together tonight to have a candid conversation, not a confrontation, a candid conversation about racism and anti-Semitism. And I hope that this is a fitting way to honor James Baldwin's call to action on this 17th day of Black History Month. So this is a two-part program, and first we're talking to local leaders with our host, Zach Banner. Zach Banner, thank you for your vision, and to all of our partners for this event. Take it away, Zach.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I kind of want to use this moment to kind of get the formality of thanking everyone who's involved, including our panelists, including all the organizations that we've worked with, that we've communicated with, that have partnered along to do this panel. And including the athletes and everyone involved. Like you said, today is not something where we want conflict, but we want to talk about something that's really conflicting. That's really, really hard because there's emotions involved when you talk about anti-Semitism and racism. And unfortunately, it's all in the same category. It's all in the same group of individuals who are trying to force white supremacy through this country and keep both groups, both Jewish, Black, brown, all minority groups down. And it's it's very, very inspiring to be able to do this because, one thing we'll get into later in the second part when us three athletes are up there is this isn't normal. This isn't a normal thing. This isn't a social norm, especially in pro sports. And it's kind of some groundbreaking stuff, right? Not to toot my own horn or not to toot our own horn as a team, but we're really like changing lives and we're really stepping up to the plate when it comes to this. And I want to thank Alicia and I want to thank Josh for being a part of this.
Okay, so let's get down to it. So joining us for this part of the program, and Zach, thank you so much for doing this. And as you said, I've never heard of a program like this in the United States. For athletes to come out and speak up about what's happening and to make this really crucial connection, it's amazing. And I've called it a miracle, and I think it is a miracle. Amazing. So Zach, I think everybody knows you, but you play for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm wearing my closest thing to Steelers gear for the event.
There you go. I appreciate it. Yeah, I like it.
And now we're going to be joined by Jasiri X from One Hood Media and by Rabbi Hazen Jeffrey Myers from the Tree of Life. So we're going to get into it. You've heard from me a little bit. We've heard from Zach a little bit, but I still want to start with Zach and hear about what inspired you to have this conversation.
I think that, it's kind of, I don't want to say embarrassing anymore because I've realized that the educational part in all this and learning what anti-Semitism is, not only the Jewish community, but amongst different groups within that, Black Jews and other groups. Educating myself, I shouldn't be embarrassed about that anymore. And I think that's a really good transition into what we're doing because, sometimes like when I learned about this, right, and I learned what anti-Semitism was, and I went into more depth with it with the AJC yesterday, and they walked us through it, and they walked us through these different underlying things that have been there for hundreds of years. I think it's a miscommunication. I really do. I feel like there's a miscommunication about what it is and what is wrong with it and how does it, because like you said, we get backlash and we get people trying to tear us down from stopping such an amazing event. This ties into the same hate and the similarities that Black and brown people face. And then also too, I'm gonna call them out in a good way. When we were talking to the AJC yesterday, in 2021, we have to realize that there's a difference and there has been a progression. And they've even admitted that Jews are definitely a lot more safer than they were in 1950s and in earlier times. But we're dealing with different things, social media, hate crimes, obviously. We're not out of it yet. I'm not saying that. Because if you say that, then you're forgetting about the Pittsburgh synagogue, the Tree of Life synagogue, where Rabbi Jeffrey Myers is going to talk about. And that to act like that we're not past that the same hate groups that are calling me the N-word are calling Jews kikes. And it's hard for me to say that, right? Because it's the same thing with Jews who try to speak out about Blacks and Browns being called nigger, the hard R in harsh reality, burning crosses, things like that. Those same groups that stormed the Capitol, right? Are looking down upon me, not literally, because I look down upon them. I'm 6'9". You know what I'm saying? Like they look down upon me because of what I am and my skin color. And the AJC was very, very That's the thing too, is I think personally, and I'm going to conclude your question with this. Personally, my Black and brown, fellow community members and people from back home and things sometimes wonder, why are you sticking up so much for them? And when you say them, that's a separating thing. You don't realize that that's being a hypocrite in yourself. And it sucks because you have to stand up for what's right. And I'm not saying my family or the group of friends are like that, but some are. And we have to realize that hate is hate and we have to put a stop to it. Because it's usually the same people that are trying to put that on.
I'm so impressed by all of the learning that you're doing, and I'm in that process of learning too, because if we're truly allies to each other, we all need to learn. And so this event really drives that point home. We are in a process of learning. It should be a judgment-free zone, because sometimes we say things that are awkward or we don't say the right thing, but our intentions are pure here. So just to contextualize some things, because I know we have a Pittsburgh audience and our audience is way beyond Pittsburgh as well. Two of us who are in this conversation are connected to Pittsburgh. I grew up here. I know, Jasira, you came here, I think, as a teenager, if I'm right. And
Yes.
then Zach and Rabbi, you are not from Pittsburgh. So I just want you to just tell people a little bit about your impressions of Pittsburgh.
Well, I'll say this first. The food is great, but that was just kind of a joking way to start it. I would say Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is a hardworking group of people. It's a hardworking community. If you don't know about the steel factories that were shut down and people out of jobs in the late 1900s, and not too long ago, man, there's still people here who are affected by it. But then again, it's definitely being from Tacoma, Washington, up by Seattle, and going to school down at SC in the West Coast. I would have to say that it is kind of diverse. It's just not as diverse as I'm used to. Those other major cities are a little bit more. I mean, you know, you can tell by the music that we play at the games. You know, we play rock, we play country, play things like that. It's definitely Yinzers are definitely a mixed group, but say it's more white dominant out here in Western PA, and I can definitely say as both a black and brown man, and when I say brown, I'm talking about my island roots. It makes sense why there's not too many wine barbecues out here. You know what I mean? That there are on the West Coast. You know, there's not an L&L. There's Hapa Hawaiian Grill. Shout out to them, but that's the most island food that you'll find in the city, and that's just because of. I'm going to say the lack of diversity, because I am going to say this. I've never been in a city outside of LA, when you talk about Brentwood and you talk about things like that, with such a large Jewish community. Mm-hmm. So I will say that as much as I talk about the lack of maybe color and pigment, there is a very diverse in terms of religion and culture. I will say that. So that's just my quick observation of Pittsburgh.
Okay. Jasiri.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the south side of Chicago. So my first response to Pittsburgh, I guess kind of similar to Zach. It was like, you know, my experience in the south side of Chicago, I grew up in an all black family. My school was 100% black, you know what I'm saying? My experience was 100% black. And then I moved to Monroeville, which is a suburb of Pittsburgh. So my first experience was like, wow. I remember the first day of school, they were like, what's the difference? I was like, all the white people, like that's the biggest difference. But Pittsburgh, to me, the power of Pittsburgh is it's like a town, you know what I'm saying? And like, we're connected in so many ways. Like we're closer, not only in distance, but I think in belief systems than we are further apart. And that's, to me, the power of Pittsburgh is like the relationships that I've been able to build with people, kind of like what Zach was saying, like across the lines. But it's like we're like a tight knit group. And I had to go through the hazing. I mean, I've been here like 20 years, like for the first like 15. I didn't qualify as a Pittsburgher. Sometimes I still don't, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, this is where I make my home. This is where our organization is. This is where I represent as a rapper. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad to, like, you know, finally be accepted into like the Pittsburgh fraternity. But it's that closeness, I think, that, you know, makes us a community. And like the fact that we can have, like, this panel might seem strange to somebody outside of Pittsburgh who doesn't know like the closeness of this city and who don't understand, you know, what happened at the Tree of Life affected us in such a very strong way, and me specifically, and how, you know, I felt like it was necessary for me to lend my voice and my platform to fighting anti-Semitism. So this is a new topic for me. I'm kind of like Zach, like I'm not a scholar, but I'm here to do the work. I'm here to learn, and what better to me platform than to be with the head of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh and the rabbi for the Tree of Life to to listen and do some learning and do some growing. So I'm honored to be on this panel with you all.
As am I. I mean, it really is incredible. Rabbi, I want to come to you now for your impressions about Pittsburgh, and I'm also wondering if they changed and how they changed after 1027.
I'm also an immigrant. I moved here from the East Coast. So for me, it was an immense culture shock to move from the New York, New Jersey area to move out to Pittsburgh, because prior to moving here, I'd never been here. I really didn't even know where Pittsburgh was. I can say this, that after 1 year of beginning to learn your way around Pittsburgh, I began to see what an interesting town it is. It is a small town mentality, even though it covers a really vast geographical area. Most particularly, I learned a lot about Pittsburgh after October 27th. I learned that it didn't matter who the people were. Everyone opened up their arms, their doors to care. And that to me is an incredible representation of the goodness that is Pittsburgh. Yes, there's a lot of work to do. There is no city that is perfect, and Pittsburgh by all means is not perfect, but there are a lot of people here who care, who want to make it better. And I found in my experiences, all these doors have opened to me so quickly that usually take time to develop those relationships. I'm entering those doors. Obviously now with COVID, maybe fewer doors, but nonetheless, when the time is right, to walk into all of those doors, to extend a hand in friendship, to say, okay, how can we work together to make things better?
And Lauren, I want to say too, before you transition, kind of on the same topic we're talking about, because I definitely want to. I think there's even more a deeper picture like of painting Pittsburgh. It's not just it's different because it's a working class white. And I'm just going to go in more depth. This is me being brave a little bit, but this is also me speaking the truth. There's a difference between Beverly Hills and Pittsburgh.
True.
Okay. There's Beverly Hills is that's what I went to school with. That's they send their kids to the same school I went to. There's a reason why they call USC the University of Spoiled Children. It costs $60,000 to $70,000 a year to go there, and I know Duquesne's a great school, but I know that that's not as much, and that's a private school, correct? And it's just one of those situations where we have the working class. We actually have a lot of lower class white Americans who get. And that's why sometimes it's kind of cool because it's relatable and they get struggle. When this city is still going through this pandemic, that's why I was so quick to donate to the PGH food bank, because I know that there's a lot of people who need that more out here than they do in the hills of California. And then they do in the hills and Bellevue and Washington, outside of Seattle, where I grew up. It's different, but at the same time, there's that disconnect. Okay, we're talking about dive bars, we're talking about $2 wells, we're talking about cheap draft beers. We're talking about people who work for their dime and their nickel, but at the same time, they're white, and that's really hard. And they idolize me because I'm a football player and because I do that, right? But like at the same time, do some of them not give the same respect to other Black and brown African Americans and Black and brown people of other races? Do they look down upon Jews because of who they worship and because of who they are? Do they think that they're, I talked to the AJC yesterday. There's a lot of like deep roots. Like back in Europe, they believed that Jews were poisoning the water and poisoning the wells and things like that. Like, that's just crazy. Like, stop. You know what I mean? It's just the same thing as certain groups believe that you were struck down with black skin. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. That's what part of some people like believe in that type of religion, believe in those type of things and those cultures. And then when you just sit in the same room as one of us, this is part of that education process. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that a little bit, but told the truth at the same time.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. So just briefly, I grew up outside of Pittsburgh in McKeesport, and I made a good connection with Gary, who's working on this behind the scenes because his wife's from there, and we all had our first jobs in Monroeville. So I'm from here, but I was away for a long time. So coming back, what really what's remarkable for me is if you're working in a nonprofit, it's very easy to partner with other nonprofits. And there's a real sense of community and the community coming together to address problems that we have in the city. And Zach, what you say about giving right away to the food bank, thank you for doing that. A lot of us started to direct what we could toward urgent human needs in that moment. And they were great and they continue to be. There's a lot of need here. But one thing that we didn't get at, although Zach, we were sort of starting that conversation, is that Pittsburgh has repeatedly been named the most livable city in the United States. And like a lot of people who are from here, I love this place. Coming back after many years, I see a lot of the problems that we have here. And for many people, it is barely livable in Pittsburgh. Gender equity report that came out in 2019, or I guess it's the Mayor's Gender Commission, revealed that Pittsburgh is the worst city in the United States for Black women. So Jasiri, I want to direct a question to you. And I watch your What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know programs, which are so incredible. And you're taking on the most pressing issues right now for the Black community. And I gain a lot from watching those programs. So I'm wondering if you could share some wisdom with us. What do our viewers need to know about what's happening in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about all the time, like two Pittsburghs, you know, it's like two different experiences. So there's an experience you have in Pittsburgh as a white person. You know, there's a famous author from Pittsburgh named Damon Young, and I always think about him because he's funny. He's like, you know, he's somebody that uses humor and wit, but he called Pittsburgh white Wakanda, which I just thought was hilarious. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, it's a different experience. And I think like to be Black in Pittsburgh oftentimes is to feel marginalized, is to feel, you know, segregated, is to feel, you know, oppressed in a lot of ways. And so, you know, one of the things that we've tried to do at One Hood is to bring communities together and see how we can deal with some of these urgent issues. You know, our What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know program actually started as What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know About COVID-19. And it was a direct response to the disparities that were happening in COVID-19 with our communities, that Black communities and Black people were, you know, not only going to the hospital at a higher percentage, dying in a higher percentage. And so what we've tried to do is provide our community with that information to help. We do a show on Thursdays. We have a show tomorrow called Ask a Black Doctor. Again, it was like Ask a Black Doctor about COVID-19. So I would just say to folks, like you said, sometimes, you know, like you come to Pittsburgh, come visit. It's a beautiful place to be, but you might have a different experience than Black people that live here. So I would say, like, listen to Black people, listen to the Black women, about like what are the ways that we need to change this city for the better, and then, you know, support Black-led organizations. You know, there's, you know, a lot besides One Hood. There's a lot of Black women-led organizations. You know, Alliance for Police Accountability is one, doing great work. New Voices for Pittsburgh is another that's doing great work. So I would, you know, kind of listen to those folks and kind of like what we're trying to do right now. Like, let's learn from one another. Let's learn from one another's experience, and then see like, okay, how best can I show up? Like, you know, and that's kind of, you know, I'm like, well, what you need me to do? Like, do you need me to, you know, sweep the floor over here? Like, how best can I show up in allyship? And I think like that allyship thing is something that we're all still like working towards and trying to define, you know what I'm saying? So definitely, you know, support the Gwen's Girls is another great organization. Yeah. It's a lot of organizations that I would just encourage folks to support and follow their lead.
Nice. So that's great. And we do a lot of work in Hazelwood. When we're open to the public, we're right up the street from the Center of Life. We work with Data House, lots of really great things going on in Hazelwood too. Zach, I feel like I first met you in the video that you recorded after the Deshaun Jackson tweet. Mm-hmm. So what motivated you to make that video, and were you surprised by the response?
Very surprised by the response. I did not. I need people to know when, especially everyone that's working on this panel is the same as me. I would say us, we do not do these things for credit. We do these things for change. You know what I mean? I appreciate it, and I appreciate the support back, especially towards everything that I'm doing towards my communities. But it's a personal belief that I have in the National Football League. When one of us mess up, we have to step up and hold each other accountable in a professional manner to where we preach change. Okay. So what happened is there was a gentleman that was trying to inspire blacks and black and brown in a certain way. And it was an anti-Semitic way, and it was wrong. And probably, I don't think anybody in this world should ever quote Hitler, but he did, and he messed up, and he messed up big. And he had to go through his own educational processes and his own personal things. But at the time, it was that action stunted and kind of put a break on what we were doing towards Black Lives Matter, towards George Floyd, towards stepping up and representing, like, you know, I forgot to mention this too. I first met JX when we were marching for Antoine Rose over on the east side. There's black people here that just feel like they're shoved into a certain corner of the city. That's kind of another observation of the city of Pittsburgh. And I'm not surprised that their voices aren't heard from what JX was saying. But at the same time, to go back to your question, it was just stepping up for what's right. And then at the same time, too, there were some personal connections. Like, I have friends who are Jewish. I have everybody knows this now, that I was part of a Jewish fraternity, Zeta Beta Tau, nationally. They told me it was multicultural when I was first pledging. But you find out. Remember, I told you, a high income school, high tuition. I'm looking around. I'm like one of 4 black dudes in the house, but that didn't matter to me because it's the kind of heart that I like. I can't preach let's not hate, but we hate. You know what I mean? I can't do that, but and hop on a screen with Lauren and Rabbi here, who are fairer skinned than JX and I, and not have these tough and hard conversations. But when we get off, I don't treat them like normal people. You guys want to come over and break bread? We can do that anytime. You know what I mean? Like, it's that I can't preach those things and not back it up. And then after that, right, you get the outcry, you get the pores, you get the tears, you get everything, the support from the Jewish community. Like, I didn't even know. I kept saying Jewish community because I was so scared of saying Jews. I thought because that horrible man we talked about, Hitler, because they use the term Jews, and when other groups talk bad about the Jewish community, they say Jews, Jews, Jews. I thought saying Jews was like saying the N-word. I thought that was bad. I thought that was like saying kike. I did. And then I realized, and I even asked Rabbi here, and he's the one that taught me. He said, no, you're good. He said, he said, that's what we are. He said, I'm a Jew. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's those certain educational pieces and those connotations that we have to learn. And if we don't, then we're ignorant and we don't care. And we preach for identity to the black and brown people in the city of Pittsburgh. But you can't do that by turning off a light on Squirrel Hill and Shady Side and other Jewish communities that we have.
Rabbi, what do you think about that? Do you have a response?
I was really surprised when Zach first uttered the statement. I saw the video of it, and that's when, through some connections, was able to finally reach out to Zach. And Zach and I had a really wonderful one-on-one conversation because I really wanted to get to the source of his angst about the statements that were made and what his motivation was. And to me, when anyone in the community is going to stand up and say, this is wrong, this is not whom we should be as human beings, to me, that's a willing partner to extend a hand in friendship to say, okay, how can we work together? I hear you, I appreciate you, and what can we now do to make change? Because we're both on the same side when it comes to that any bigotry or form of racism is not acceptable. How do we work together? At least to start small here, how do we make Pittsburgh better? Let's make Pittsburgh the laboratory and then grow that beyond Pittsburgh.
Rabbi, when this panel's over, I want you to send me your interior designer, please, because I enjoy it.
My wife.
Background. Okay, your wife.
We need to meet your wife. Okay, so Jasiri, I want to bring you back in because I'm really interested to hear, and I know a lot of other people want to hear too, because this has been the topic of the day, and we all faced a lot of pressure from outside sources criticizing what we're doing here. And I'm so grateful that you're here, first of all, and eager for people to hear from you about how your thinking has evolved since, over the last 5-6 years, and also how the Tree of Life, how that's changed you. You hinted at it before, but a little more, please.
Yeah, and I first want to say, and I know, for the record, like nobody asked me to do that, but I really apologize to the panel. I kind of felt like, like my presence kind of hijacked, what was, what we're trying to do right now, which is find unity, find allyship, and find solidarity. So I apologize for that. And I also apologize to people. I, like you said, I've grown, and I've grown in public. I've been a person in public, and I've made statements publicly that have been harmful and hurtful to the Jewish community. So I just want to just apologize straight up for that, and say that, I'm working on, being a better human being. I wasn't in community with folks. And I think what happens is when you kind of live these segregated lives, I was in the Black community, and I was about like Black issues. And I think, like, for me, the Tree of Life struck me, not only because of the closeness to where I live, but also because the people that that were affected by it were people that or allies of ours, marched with us, like Zach, for justice for Antoine Rose. And I felt like I wouldn't be a good ally if I didn't come out when folks in the Jewish community asked us to come out. And it really led to these conversations with organizations like Bend the Arc and Repair the World, and just folks in the Jewish community that kind of gave me a context for why particularly Jewish people were very vigilant against language. This was something that I didn't understand, because as a Black person, you deal with being even my name. Like, I would go the first day of school, and my name is Jasiri, and I would automatically know, like, I got to correct somebody. They're not going to understand this. And so I didn't understand until I got the proper context. And it was really, sitting down and breaking bread and speaking with members of the Jewish community about the context of why, the history where Jewish people had to leave places, and it starts with language, and that language led to violence. And we saw that at the Tree of Life. It was language that led to actual violence. And this is why language is important. And so I had to do that work on my own self to say, okay, I want to be a better ally. And I told you, like, I didn't, kind of like what Zach said, like, I didn't know certain words or terms that I was using would be classified as anti-Semitic. I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm speaking on something, but then when I was able to sit in community with folks, and it really started with, I got a fellowship from the Nathan Cummings Foundation. I just definitely want to acknowledge Nathan Cummings Foundation. Sort of like Zach, I didn't know it was a Jewish foundation. They gave me a fellowship, and I was happy, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, oh, here are people that have different experiences. So we started to talk about what does Black Jewish unity and solidarity really look like. But it really started with those hard conversations. And so I thank folks for wanting to hold me accountable. And I'm here to say that I'm willing to be held accountable. And more so, I'm willing to exhibit change behavior. And I think what I've tried to do in the wake of Tree of Life is to be a better ally and supporter of members of the Jewish community, and to understand that, like, white supremacist violence is not just a Black issue or a brown issue, but obviously it's a Jewish issue as well. And if we're all under attack by this white supremacist violence, why shouldn't we be in solidarity to not just speak up for one another, but also protect one another? And so that's kind of what, I don't want to take up the whole thing, but that's kind of what I've been learning. But to say, like, for folks that want to hold me accountable, you're not wrong. You know what I'm saying? You're not wrong to want to hold me accountable. And that for me, my job is to now exhibit better behavior, continue this community work, learn more, keep my ears open, and fight for not just my community, but all communities.
And I do want to say something too, Lauren, before you continue, because this is obviously my personal event. We're doing this as a team, but this is something in representation of me. And there's one thing that you learn about being a leader, not only in the National Football League, and not only just in football, but through this activist life and through stepping up and representing groups and cultures. I want to say this loud and clear because I want to reiterate what Lauren said earlier. To the ones that were trying to stop this event because of JX's past, I need you to look at it from a non-hypocritical view. Because as much as you want to exclude those who say anti-Semitic things, sometimes you're preventing growth. And I'm not going to put on, I promise you, my group will not put on an event. My team will never put on an event or a panel or anything like this if we didn't know what we were going into. And I understood what JX said in the past. I grew up around that. If you've ever heard of another interaction, he works with other Jewish organizations like Bend the Ark and other ones that are doing great things. When we did something, I said I opened up to them on a very similar panel like this. I grew up on the West Coast around a bunch of guys preaching certain things by casually handing out bean pies. And, the Muslim, and I don't want to disrespect them because I don't know as much about them either, but they were preaching inclusive and exclusive, you get what I'm saying? Exclusiveness and trying to preach. Some of them were trying to preach those certain things. JX has grown up just as much as I have. And I've heard things. I've never spoken out about it. I've never backed it up because I never believed in it. But I grew up on the West Coast around people who are preaching those certain things, influences of Farrakhan, influence of those type of things. And sooner or later, we all grow up and we realize hate is hate. I'm glad we got to this part because I was really avid about this because JX is a friend. And when you see people pick on a friend, I get it. And he even acknowledged it for past reasons. That's one thing. But we have to allow this man to publicly move on because when that one hood organization and everything he represents means one hood and there's no exclusiveness. It's all inclusive. Everybody in Pittsburgh, everybody in the 412. I would like everybody to understand that this man he's being political. He's being professional right now, but in his own way, he's begging and to move on because he's doing so much great work. And I wouldn't advocate that if I didn't believe it. And JX, I wanted to say that publicly, and I wanted to say that this is not scripted. This is real. We need to move on from this because what are we doing sitting around here picking on JX? But we have actual people who have mean hearts. We have actually people who have like bad views of life. We need to move on from this. I preach that. And JX is local, and I understand my sexy smile and my good football, my good play on the field brings a national audience. So there's other people who aren't from here who understand that. Yeah. Understand JX does a lot of great work, and I think we should move on. Now we're good.
So thank you both. And Jasiri, thank you. Thank you for that, for just showing up here and being so real. And Zach, you too, for making this happen, for bringing us together in good faith with open hearts. We're really at the beginning of walking a path together. And this is where we start. We start with honesty and we start with being vulnerable. And I'm just really grateful to both of you. And I want to bring the rabbi back in because I think we can think of this in a Jewish context. And no one does it better. So I know that Teshuva is important to you. So I wonder if you would share some thoughts with us about that.
Thank you, Lauren. Great question. Teshuva is the Jewish concept that's closely linked to repentance. It means about turning, taking where we're at, turning and moving in a positive way so that when the same situation arises, you don't respond in the same way, you respond in a better way that's more appropriate. And I, for one, really don't know Jasiri well. I'm also new to the community. But having read some of comments people have made, having read a little bit of history and so forth and hearing today, I would submit to those listening that what Jasiri has just done now would be from a Jewish perspective called public teshuva, repenting for the past, offering a hand in friendship to say, how can we move together forward? We all learn from the things we go through in life because it's a journey. We all have mistakes we make along the way. There is no one who is perfect. yours truly included. So Jaziri, I commend you for taking a public stance, for being brave and bold and facing down those who would speak ill of you. And in appreciation, I extend my hand to you in friendship. There we are. That somehow, once COVID is done, we get together. We talk about this. Let's find ways that we can work together, because we're stronger when we work together to make a better Pittsburgh. So Zach, thank you for bringing this about so that we could have this moment, so that we can say, okay, we learned from our past, but we move forward together, proudly, walking together to make a better world. And isn't that why we're here?
Thank you, bro. I call dibs on the couch, by the way, when we all meet up.
Yeah. I have a lazy boy too, if you want. So
I'm down, whatever.
We're getting close to the conclusion of our time together. It went really quickly, but we can build, if you don't mind, from what the rabbi was just saying, that I want us just in our last moments to think a little bit about how we're going to build bridges between our communities. And we already have this thing. We've invited ourselves to the rabbi's house. So, I mean, we're ready to do that. But what else? I mean, what else should we be thinking about?
Well, I would say for me and for us in the Jewish community to hear the stories of the Black community. As it says in the Proverbs, you can't understand someone unless you walk a mile in their shoes. To hear the stories, to hear the concerns, to be able to say, okay, what are the practical things that we can help do, that we can work together towards, because we're stronger when we're together. So I think the most important thing is not always talk, but that's why God gave us one mouth and two ears, because we need to do more listening before we do more talking. So I'm here to listen.
Yeah, Jasiri?
I would agree. That really helped me, like hearing people's stories, striving to put myself in other shoes. But I also agree with like acts of faith, like, how can we support one another? I'm really, interested in this piece around allyship and what does allyship look like and how do we best show up with one another and for one another. So I also think it comes down to kind of those collaborations that you talked about, Lauren. Like, how can we, we did an incredible collaboration with Zach's foundation. We got a bunch of children, like, Christmas toys. Zach paid for everything. And their life, I mean, they were so happy and touched by that. So it's like, how can we collaborate with one another with something we can do collectively? And then it becomes an example for other people, like, oh, we can come together, we can work together. And so I'm interested in that. So, I know we're talking about behind the scenes, some work with the Holocaust Center in One Hood.
Yes.
I would definitely like to continue to collaborate with the B3 Foundation as well as the Tree of Life. And so I'm just saying, and as well as if there's, folks listening and want to do some work, like I'm just want to open it up to say, like, holler at us. You know what I'm saying? Let's make this city better for everybody. That's all. We want a Pittsburgh livable for all. And not just a select few. And so that's the work that we're trying to strive for.
Zach, you want to have the last word?
Yeah, I think moving forward in Pittsburgh, especially with these two and with you, Lauren, is I think the best advice is to have open ears in the 412. I think there's a lot of bad things that have been passed down from generation. I see it's generational. It's not just pops up, right? This has been kind of a history. I need people to listen to us and say that we are not asking for something ridiculous. We're just asking for you to include those who are not included. And if you think about it with that kind of mindset moving forward, I think Pittsburgh, I love Pittsburgh, but also I love Pittsburgh as an NFL player. I love Pittsburgh as somebody who makes probably more than a big portion of the people in the city. So I can't forget about the Zach banner before he went to USC. I can't forget about the Zach banner, growing up around the east side of Tacoma, which is very similar to the east side of Pittsburgh. It's funny how that works. It's funny how every city has an MLK street, and usually that MLK street runs through the hood. We have to be able to be honest about these certain things. And you know what's awesome is that I have two amazing, fair-skinned Jewish people on this panel with me who are smiling, who are nodding their head because they believe it. And I say that to my Jewish brothers and sisters over in Squirrel Hill and Shady Side. As much as you want a spotlight brought into yours, I need you to share that spotlight with others around Pittsburgh. Not with me, because I don't need it. I'm very well off, and I'll stay that way. But I'm also backing everybody. And I want us to stop the hate, and I want us to move forward.
Well, this has been an incredible experience. Thank you to everyone on this panel, and I implore everyone in our audience, please be kind to each other. And when we walk the path to allyship and solidarity, we must learn about each other with open hearts. So we're going to go to intermission now. Zach, Jasiri, Rabbi Myers, thank you so much. All right, we're back. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in from, I believe, all around the world. We're now in the second part of our event, and we're going to talk to some professional athletes. And I had hoped to see everyone before this moment, but now you will all get to see me really starstruck, which did happen in my first call with Zach Banner, but now I've gotten to spend a little bit more time with him. In that first conversation, I told Zach that he single-handedly brought me back to watching NFL football. And that happened because of the nature of his activism and how much he is inspiring people. And indeed, tonight's event fits into a deep history of athlete activism. Per Arit Yellen, who was instrumental in planning tonight's event. She's at the University of Southern California. Got a little ahead of myself there. She wrote, "The notion that athletes never had opinions is false. They've always had opinions about what's going on socially, domestically, and internationally. Athletes just didn't feel comfortable enough to speak out. They were afraid of retaliation based on what they'd seen in the past. We're in a new era now," she continued, "where athletes have the most social and economic power they've ever had, and part of that has to do with social media. There's a level of transparency that has never existed before. Athletes actually now feel comfortable saying what's on their minds and speaking out. They have enough stability, both financially and socially, that they are willing to speak up regardless of what the consequences might be." So I remarked in the beginning of this program that it is unusual, and I called it a miracle, that we're talking about anti-racist activism and fighting anti-Semitism in the same sentence. And it's incredible what we're doing. I am just thrilled now to bring in our next group of guests. And first, I'm happy to introduce Alicia Clark. And now you are in Washington, but you play also in Europe and in Israel. And I'm so excited to meet you. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
Oh, it's so great to meet you. And are you in France? Am I understanding correctly?
I am. I'm currently in France right now.
So it's like the middle of the night where you are?
Yeah, it's about a little after 2 in the morning.
Oh my goodness. All right, so I'm going to introduce Josh as well, and Zach will come back, and then we'll have a conversation. So Josh Bell is with us as well, beloved in Pittsburgh. We were sorry to lose you, and now you're in Washington, and their gain is our loss. So it's great to see you. I know everyone is so excited that you're on this panel with us. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to be here, and I know that I'm going to miss Pittsburgh a ton. A lot of great memories there, but happy for new beginnings and new opportunities here in DC.
Well, we'll be wishing you well while we're missing you. We'll be wishing you well. So I think Zach is going to come back with us, but we can get started until there he is. Okay. Zach, anything you want to say?
University of Southern California, Lauren.
I got that out. You know what? We do a lot of work with another USC, and I just stumbled all over it. I'm human too, Zach.
Not USC. That's South Carolina. They know better.
I'm human too. What can I say?
You are.
Too human. That's part of this story here, that we're all people. So, okay, so we're all together now, and I'm just thrilled to be doing this part of it. And we've heard a bit from you, Zach, about what inspires your activism. And in case we have people who are just joining us, let's hear a little bit more about that. And then I want to hear from everybody about what inspires your activism, what you care about. And then we'll drill down a little bit deeper into the topic that's bringing us together now.
Yeah, I think activism is sometimes complex when in the light of not only myself, but these other two that I know real well, JB and Alicia, because it's just natural. It's natural love. Like we're super passionate on what we want to do because it hits home for us. And I'll let them explain their reasons. But for mine, it's growing up on East Tacoma, around kids, around grown men and women who deal with poverty, who deal with police brutality, who deal with certain things that low-income neighborhoods don't share with anyone else. And when you're speaking out about those things and you're helping them and you're trying to make change to legislation, that's another thing that we've done this year through the Black Lives Matter movement, through the Pittsburgh Steelers, through our social injustice group. So working with not only guys in the committee and my team, but also working with these two who have demonstrated in their own leagues. JB's done it with the MLB, which is right next to hockey when it comes to the lack of diversity in terms of American sports. And Alicia, it belongs to a league that doesn't get enough credit for how much social injustice work that they do. The WNBA is amazing. They're full of brave women who like to step out and do amazing things, like wear awesome t-shirts like she's doing and staying up in the middle of the night. And just this, it's like, it's passion. And it's awesome, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Okay, Alicia.
Yeah. This past.
We're having a sound problem.
How you doing? Can you hear us, Alicia?
Can you hear
We
me?
can't hear you.
Sign language. Guys, she's in Europe, so we should give her a sec. We'll
Yeah. Right, we might have a delay.
All right. Gary, you can get her taken care of. You can go to
We'll go to Josh. We'll go to
Lauren,
Josh.
I'm doing your job. I'm sorry. Do your job. Sorry.
Well, you're not stumbling over your words like I am, so take it away. Josh, please.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I went to my parents sent me to private schools, private Catholic schools, and I grew up in a place where I knew, I guess, what it felt like to, be bullied, have racial remarks thrown at me, and I think that growing up, you get past those things. Growing up, you focus on the things that you have to focus on to get to where you want to be in life as an adult. And now I'm here. And I think that, a couple of years ago with the Tree of Life incident, that was the first instance where, I realized that it wasn't just, hatred against Blacks and America that needed to be addressed. I think that was my focus. That was my understanding, we're on our way. I think we're on the right path towards equality, that true understanding of, people are people. People are going to make mistakes. People are good. People are bad, but people are people, and one is one. And I mean, with the Tree of Life, that kind of opened up my eyes to what's really going on. And then this past year with, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, specifically that incident, and I want to say New York in that Central Park. Just realizing that, they're one and the same. That hatred is one and the same. That idea that one person is less than the next because of, history, or because of skin color, because of, religion. I think that is something that we all need to educate ourselves on, because we all know what it feels like to either be bullied or have racial remarks thrown our way. And for me, just learning so much this past year about anti-Semitism and working with Zach, and being a part of this, I've learned so much. And I think that education is key. You learn, you grow, and you can make better decisions in the future.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And just coming off of the buzz from the last conversation, it's so powerful when we talk to each other and we listen and we learn. It's incredible what we can accomplish when we do that. So I think, Alicia, your sound is fixed now.
Hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
This is the White House service.
I see.
No, I think here, my voice here, reason why I live in.
Alicia, I'm going to be the first one to tell you, no, we can't. We
So
still
glitch.
can't hear you.
So
You're
glitch.
glitching out. So many people are like behind the scenes right now. Yeah, we can't hear. Lauren was trying to be nice. Josh muted his mic because he just didn't want to be the awkward one. But I'm just going to be the first one to tell you.
They're going to keep troubleshooting with you, and we're going to
figure this out.
We're going to
And
get it to work.
If not, your smile and your T-shirt is all we need, and I appreciate you. Thank you. We're going to figure this out.
And if we are going to get it to work, but if we can't, we're going to come back around, because you have such an incredible story, and I want to hear more. So I'm sure everybody wants to hear more. I hope we get there. So, so the two of you have been in touch and thinking about this intersection of racism and anti-Semitism, and it's amazing. And I called it a miracle. And I just don't think this has ever happened before, that professional athletes have come together to speak out against anti-Semitism. What an amazing thing. So thank you both. I'm just going to keep saying amazing, and don't mind me. But Josh, I know that while you were here, you were really known for how you were giving back to the community. So I want to acknowledge that and say, how much we appreciate that. What are you working on now? What do you care about now?
Yeah, I actually was on a phone call on Christmas Eve with the PR director, Sean. I want to say her last name is Bertandi or something like that, with DC. And she gave me a whole list of things that they're already working on. And one of the things that stuck out to me was just addressing food deserts. The idea that, finding a healthy meal is hard for certain people just because of where they live. And, a lot of that ties back into education. How they're feeling in school is going to be reflected on their grades, what kind of schools they get into, if they're going to even go to college. And I feel like trying to nip that in the bud, allow for opportunity for, kids and adults alike to, at least have access to healthier food options. There's some areas all over the world. I mean, if you look into it, here in the States, there are going to be food deserts, in your state, wherever you're listening, in your city, wherever you're listening. And the idea of a food desert is, it takes, 2 or 3 bus stops just for you to get to a grocery store. And on the way, there's, liquor stores and McDonald's and Taco Bells. And when you're working 9 to 5 and you have kids to feed, sometimes it's easier to, hop to a McDonald's or hop to a KFC and get the bucket, as opposed to bringing home, nutritional options for your kids to grow with, for your kids to, learn to enjoy, and, just allow for them to have better. You'll hear my dogs, my dog and my cats fighting in the background. So I'll have my own technical difficulties as well.
It's relatable for a lot of us. Definitely relatable.
But yeah, I think that's where I'm going to start. I'll see what I can do there in DC, and then, see if I can, branch out, do some more.
That's really good. And Zach was talking about what he has done also to address food insecurity and hunger in Pittsburgh, especially in the time of COVID. And I'm always remembering that, and it's relevant for the two of you. And I hope we'll have Alicia back too before long. That we are in a position where, thank goodness, we have enough to eat, and a lot of people are really struggling now. And same with work, like we're working and we have regular paychecks. So I'm always trying to keep in mind what other people are going through in this moment, and be there and contribute in what ways we can. So Zach, did you want to add anything about what you're up to?
A lot of people know about the stuff that B3 Foundation is doing, My Foundation is doing within education, within Pittsburgh, with back home in the greater Seattle area and Tacoma, and back home in Los Angeles and the island of Guam. But I do want to put a highlight on JB real quick, because I do want to show not only a spotlight on him, but just not only the amazing detailed work that he just got done explaining about it's also the detail of him showing up in my maturity and growth and my maturation. Before camp last year, I kind of got into the habit because it just didn't seem like a lot of people were pointing out a lot of certain things that were happening, especially here in Pittsburgh and especially online and social media. And he is the one and only person who has ever kind of like encouraged me to read more, to educate myself more, to find out more things that we can do to make change instead of making noise. Because yes, we can point out hate, but how are we going to change it? And I just want to give a quick shout out to JB for that, because that's real, and that's a real thing. And that's something that my group plans on working with and helping out in that way, on top of the awesome things that we're already doing. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say about that.
So I think we're going to get Alicia back.
Here we go, Alicia. We got it.
We're fingers crossed. Okay, let's hear from you.
Okay.
Try again.
Can you?
Oh, it's still a little bit in and out.
No.
Oh.
You shouldn't be embarrassed. It's our thing.
It's that we can blame the hotel, I think.
Well, another thing too, while we're doing that, Lauren,
Sure.
something that we're personally doing with B3. Apologize, Alicia.
Yeah.
We'll get you fixed. Hopefully, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But
Yeah,
one thing that B3 is doing this year, or not this year, but new this year, is our scholarship and our scholarship fund, and we're dedicating a total of $10,000 a year for 4 years to a kid who really wants to dive in, who has shown admirations and promise in diving into their community and has had previous work in their community. And that application process you can find at b3foundation.org, our personal website, and fill out the application for a kid going to college, because not only during a pandemic, but also, it's very important that we build a community. That's something that B3 believes in building leaders. And Josh helped me step up, and not, in a very small way. And I'm going to hold other kids accountable for stepping up in their community as well.
okay. So we're going to try one more thing and have Alicia sound only.
Yeah,
And
because
not
we need
pick
her.
up video. See, yeah, this is an important part of our conversation.
We're not trying to cut her out.
No, we don't. We want to hear from Alicia for sure. Can we hear you?
Gary, if this don't work, Gary,
Okay.
you're fired, Gary. The production guy. We're going to get you fired,
Yeah.
Gary.
Oh, it's still not very good. Okay, we'll try.
Happening.
I still don't think that's working. So, okay, we'll keep trying still from behind the scenes, and I'm going to take the opportunity to say the University of Southern California.
There you go.
I try to stay with that and get that right. So,
So I just want to step in and talk a little bit about yesterday, because Zach and I were on this Zoom call with AJC. And,
yes, this is where we're going next. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it was an opportunity for me personally to learn so much. I think that, if you don't know about something, you have no idea about the history. And I feel like even for me as a Black man in America, there were some institutionalized racist things that were sprinkled throughout history that I had no idea about. Things that, I learned about this past year and reading just about the prison systems, just about gerrymandering, just, about segregation as a whole. And just going with AJC yesterday and listening just for an hour, talking about what anti-Semitism looks like. I took some notes here. It was 60% of all religious hate crimes are targeted at Jews, and 48% of racial hate crimes are targeted at Blacks. So that's 3 a day for Jewish people and 6 a day for Black people. And it stems from that same hatred, right? So I think that's easy to understand. Like, you aren't like me. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to, use power against you. I'm going to use force against you. And I think that everybody understands that that's wrong. But in regards to like the institutionalized racism that really struck me this past year, learning more and more about, laws that, or just practices that were just unfortunate and kind of sick to think about. But just like segregation, I want to say it was, you still see it in communities today, but, a lot of good work was done in the 60s with the civil rights movement. But universities capped their number of Jews going there. So if you had a Jewish name, people were trying to cover up their names, change their names just so they could attend college. And that kind of, trying to hide yourself, that kind of, trying to camouflage and not be you is what we, especially as a younger generation, needs to, not teach to the next. If we can be the generation that stops that, and if we can be the generation that does, whatever it takes to make sure that, stuff like this can't happen in America, and let it happen somewhere else, and we can try to deal with that later, but let's fix ourselves first and, grow from there.
Yeah, that's part of what inspires the work that the Holocaust Center is doing to address these issues, is that we look back to the 1960s and say we made so much progress. And then after a summer of protests, and there's momentum and there's a reckoning in this country, how do you keep that momentum? Like, how do you keep this in the public eye and bring in allies and really work toward progress? That's the challenge. And that you're learning, that you had your meeting with the AJC, that you're studying anti-Semitism and including it in the conversation is so important. And okay, we're waiting for Alicia. I hope she's going to be back. If we can't get her back, we will share some information about her, because I know that people really want to know more about her, even more so since we haven't been able to hear from her. But when we get her back, I want to hear from you all about your teams and the challenges that you see. Okay, are we back? I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah, it cut off again.
Yeah, so we'll bring her in when we have her back, but I want to hear about the challenges that you have in your teams and in your sports. So I know that there are big differences between Major League Baseball and the NFL.
Yeah, I think and I'll let Josh speak on his league and everything like that. But for mine, it's kind of a mix up in the direction we're going. I think one thing that we've been in agreement with, I'm also part of not only the Steelers, but the NFLPA committee and the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers and representation of our team. And I think one thing that we all agree on is that we need to be on the same page, because there are some people who did not speak out against Deshaun Jackson because they did not want to nerf Black Lives Matter. There are some people who chose not to bring light to that situation because they felt like it was slowing down the movement and taking the spotlight off of Blacks and Browns. And that's just where I disagree, because we can still do the amazing work. We can still do those type of things and still not include anti-Semitism. And I know that, Josh really spoke of it about our educational seminar or class, whatever you want to talk about. Him and I were educated by the AJC because we wanted to know, what is anti-Semitism in 2021? What do we tell people, And there's these underlying things on social media. There's these underlying things that are in commercial ads. There's so many different things. And it was the thing that I want people to understand is that the AJC recognized to Josh and I that there's a huge difference between anti-Semitism and hate towards Jews for their culture and who they are. And there's a huge difference between the racial inequalities that we have as Black and brown men and women in the United States. So as there are some differences, there's still similarities in hate. So as we pick each other up, and I said this before, as we pick each other up and pick our own people up, we can't step on other people's backs in doing so. Very, very passionate about preaching that, because we sound like hypocrites in the NFL if we're not willing to put spotlights on anything. And I had, the center from Philly, Kelsey. I had, the Schwartz brothers. I had Edelman, a lot of people throughout the National Football League who come from Jewish descent, and a lot of owners and a lot of GMs and a lot of very well-off people within our league just say thank you, because those kind of things are pointless and it's old school and it's outdated. I think that's the best word to say, is outdated. Okay, Alicia, here we go.
Hello, Alicia.
Can you hear me?
It's better than before, but still a little bit in and out. But
Try it.
This is all I got.
It's
Lauren,
a little
I
bit
need
better,
you.
but it's not.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is
Do it, Lauren.
we
Do
have
what you're planning on doing, because
we have a we have a chat going with Alicia, because I know everybody is really eager to hear from you. It's okay. It happens. We know it's like almost a guarantee something's going to happen with the technology. But we did ask Alicia to share a little bit more information that we could share with everybody else, because you can't hear from her. And we asked her the same questions that we're talking about. So yeah, we're laughing, but she says, okay, for me, she writes, my activism has come from my passion to want to make people feel like they matter and that they are seen. That's perfect. Okay, so it's along the screen. Thank you for that. Okay. And we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep it going, because I know that people, I mean, the thing that was really, we'll keep doing this. We can do this. We can do it for the rest of the program. We can. The thing that people really want to hear too is you have this just incredible biography, and going to play in Israel, knowing how to count in Hebrew. I read some articles about you. I'm so taken with this story, and people are going to love this. So we're still behind the scenes trying to troubleshoot so we can hear Alicia's voice in this program. We have a bit more time and we'll do it. But in the meantime, the story of just your life story and being around the world and playing basketball, but living an international life and standing up for what you believe in is just, it's so inspiring, and I want people to hear from you. So we're going to keep troubleshooting. But in the meantime, if you have if you can type something that we can put on the screen, and we'll keep trying to bring you in. Okay. All right, that's what we got. So let's see, Josh.
We're gonna go the WhatsApp way.
Okay, that's whatever works. Whatever works.
Because we need her on here.
We need her. So I mean, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna work on that. We'll do it all. We can do this. We can figure this out.
This. And I don't care about formalities. Like, come on, let's be real. Let's go. Pandemic. You act like Zoom calls aren't interrupted by dogs and babies in the back.
We already had the dog and the cat fighting.
Yeah, we got Josh's dog. He tried to mute to cover it. It's fine.
But in the meantime, Josh, I'd love to hear your observations from baseball and what it's like in baseball.
Yeah, I want to say everyone was in the same boat, or at least the large majority of people, like sane people, were in the same boat last year. Seeing the images of the George Floyd murder and really taking time to like reflect with themselves and kind of realize that there are things going on. I think a lot of people think that, things were taken care of in the 60s, we don't have to worry about that anymore. But just understanding that there's still hatred out there, and there's still problems that need to be addressed. So the team came to me and said, hey, JB, like whatever is on your mind, like speak it to us, educate us. And, I was in, I started a book club. I was trying to educate myself first and foremost. And then I started something on social media where every Sunday I would post either a quote from, civil rights activists, or just statistics, or something to help educate, something to help, even the playing field, something to help, fight the good fight in regards to racism in America. And, for the large majority of it, I got a really good support. I got, there was, high support with the team, high support with a lot of my followers. And, I would just like to address, like, sometimes it was not the support that I was looking for. Sometimes it would go into like political parties and, vote for this guy, vote for that guy, or this guy's going to change things. And I think that it's important for people to realize that no one president is going to change the world, going to change people's views on, racism or anti-Semitism. It starts with yourself. It starts on a personal level, understanding, trying to educate, even if, it's not your fight to fight, understanding that there's a fight, just for equality. And I think that if you can, not pass down, like Zach was saying before, it's pass down the hatred. You learn it from somebody and you pass it on to, the next generation, and they pass it on to the next generation. If we can, nip that right now, our kids will live better lives and their kids will live better lives. And then you won't see, country clubs that won't allow blacks or Jews in. You won't see, hate crimes in synagogues or in churches. You won't see all of the, negative imagery that I think America as a whole is associated with. You can, see the America that we have envisioned and have idolized for our whole lives. And, it starts with us. It starts on a personal level. And I'm happy to be, supported by MLB and now with the Nationals. And I know that they're fighting the good fight too. So I'm just going to continue with it.
All right, here we go. Hold on. Let me see if they can hear you.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Oh my
There we
goodness.
How
We
is
hear
it?
you.
Thumbs up?
We hear you.
Oh, good.
All right. That was some really good MacGyvering behind the scenes. Well done,
Oh,
everybody.
It's so ratchet, but it's awesome. Let's go. Here we go. Come on.
Let's do it. So everybody wants to hear from you, Alicia, and I'm hoping that you'll tell us a bit about your story and your activism and your experience with Israel and your Jewish background and that whole thing will be very interesting to everyone.
Yeah, so like I said, where my activism came from, and for me, that started with my parents. I'm biracial, so my father's black, my mother's white, and they always made sure to instill in us, that you treat everyone equally, regardless of occupation, race, whatever it is. And I've always had this deep desire to make people feel like they matter and like they're seen, because we moved around a lot when I was growing up, and I was always the new kid. I was always, the kid left out. And so I made sure that for me, everything I've done as an adult, as a young child, I've always I've always stood up for what was right. I've always stood up for the ones that are left out, the ones that are being bullied. That was always something that I, just innately took on. And so for me, I've had the privilege of playing internationally with basketball. And my first year as a professional, I played in Israel. And so being there, I also am a dual citizen. I have my citizenship there as well. And my first year there, I played as an American. And my teammates found out that my grandfather is Jewish. And so they were like, do you know what this means? You could play here as an Israeli. Like, this is such a big deal. And I had no idea. And so my journey with that started because of basketball. And so went through the process of Aliyah, got my citizenship, and played in Israel for 5 years before I moved on to other countries around Europe. And the story that you heard, I was talking to my mom about it when my teammates told me, and she was like, oh my gosh, you have to call your grandpa and you have to and talk to him. And I was like, Mom, I can only count to 10 in Hebrew. Like, that's all I got.
That's more than a lot of people have. That's
Yeah.
a lot.
So it was pretty funny. And I've had the honor to play for the national team. And that for me was one of the most amazing experiences. And the way that they just welcomed me on the team and the things that we were able to do for the first time in Israeli women's basketball history was awesome. So, that's kind of where my love and my connection with Israel is. And, some of my best friends are still there and I get to visit them. And it's a special place for me.
So the WNBA has been really at the forefront of activism for a lot of causes. And we got to hear from Josh and from Zach about activism in their sports. And I'd love to hear your experience in the WNBA.
Yeah, I mean, the WNBA is, like you said, has always been at the forefront. I think it's natural because we're a league of women. We're a league of diverse women. And when you have a collective group like that, you're the minority. And so it's only natural for us to fight for causes that are important to us. and that affect us on a daily basis. And, you know, we're all educated women. You know, I believe mostly everyone in the WNBA has graduated from college. So we're all very educated. We take that part of our activism very seriously. And that was something this summer that we wanted to do, was to, you know, just educate ourselves on social justice and say her name, and, you know, the statistics of incarceration rates, of voter suppression, of all these things. And we had so many Zoom calls where we got to speak with the leaders of these movements, and we wanted to share that education. And I think for me, that's where I fell in line with what felt right for me, is educating myself and being able to make that information accessible to everyone else, to help everyone else, you know, learn and grow and do and be better. Because that's the only way we can evolve as a society, as a people, is if we learn and take what we've learned and apply it in everyday life.
So I want to bring everyone back together again. And Alicia, thank you for staying in this until it worked. And Zach and Josh, and
you see why we fought so hard to get her back, because we all know what's up, and it's amazing to hear her perspective.
It is, and I'm sorry it's the middle of the night there, because I'd love to spend another hour talking to you and talking to both of you too. So I want to wrap up by thinking again about the activism that you're doing, and now the connection with anti-Semitism. And Zach and Josh, you both were talking about how when we talk about fighting racism and fighting anti-Semitism, we're not talking about the same things, but it goes together, and we can be united in how we approach this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how we continue to work to end anti-Semitism and to end racism.
Yeah, the next step I always start with is education. Both of my parents are educators, and that's the first and best thing we can do as people. If we don't know about something or don't know enough about something, we must start by educating ourselves, asking questions, reading, listening to community leaders. That work will always be there. One important thing that I learned in preparing for this panel is that there's a real lack of understanding of what anti-Semitism is today. And that's something we were talking about earlier, and how to recognize it. And how can a society begin to address a problem if we don't even agree or define what the problem really is? Thankfully, there exists an educational tool called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or the IHRA. Working definition of anti-Semitism has been adopted by almost 30 countries, the European Union, universities like Oxford, several U.S. cities like the city of Miami, and even by sports teams like the EPL, English Premier League. It seems like a small thing, but it's a big starting point in committing to fight anti-Semitism. One of the next steps, and one of my next steps, is going to encourage the Steelers and the teams across the NFL to endorse the IHRA working definition as a resource for both players and fans, and to continue to raise awareness about the rise of anti-Semitism and white supremacy across our country. And lastly, I would like to say it's important that the players like us three, keep standing up and speaking out for the injustices we witness. We have a big platform, and it's our privilege, not our right, but it's our privilege to get to use those to help others. And I'm looking forward to work with Josh and Alicia and so many others, and to keep fighting for racial equality and standing up against anti-Semitism.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to do the same thing as well. I'm going to talk to my GM and our PR lady about it tomorrow with the IHRA definition. And I just think that it's important to continue a conversation, as Zach was saying. You know, it doesn't have to take, you know, you open up a book, just, you know, logging in and tuning into a conversation like this, where we're trying to educate ourselves, we're trying to educate others, we're trying to bring people together, and, you know, put your time there, put your energy there. And I think the universe will, you know, accept that, acknowledge that, appreciate that, and, you know, continue to, allow that to grow. So, you know, continue to look inside your heart, understand that, you know, there's some things that you might not know, you might not be racist, you might not be, you know, anti-Semitic, but you can continue to learn how you can better fight it, so your kids could fight it better and their kids can fight it better as well. If you can acknowledge that something is wrong, you can acknowledge that you can do something about it. And I think that's the start, acknowledging that there's wrong and trying to educate yourself on it. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for, fighting the good fight with Zach and the rest of the team. And, continue to have conversations like this in the future.
JB, they dropped in the chat, because I think this is important to highlight not only your education, but how much you take this seriously. Can you give us some good reads?
Yeah, I was trying to think back. There were books that, as soon as I, put them down, you kind of break down, it breaks down barriers, it breaks down, comfort levels. What was it? I think, what are the,
put it to thought and tweet out a list.
Yeah, I want to say it's 12, that was a documentary on Netflix, was 12 or it was 13. I'm trying to think here. Let me
we can get it out into the world later. That's awesome. Yeah, several people were asking, like, what books? So we'll share that.
Because I'm gonna identify something too, like it's and this is real life, man. Like, Black and brown people have struggled in the past of having the resources to read and to educate themselves on not only anti-Semitism, but their own. And JB really put me on some good readings about some of that, and you'll tweet that later and we'll get that shared, because we really want to spread that too. You can't claim you want change if we're not going to be able to educate ourselves. So Alicia, go ahead. Lauren, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, I think for me, just what Zach just proposed, I think is awesome. And that's something I'll definitely go back to our PA to talk about. But, to echo the sentiments of both JB and Zach about just educating, we don't know what we don't know. And I think starting at the place of having an open mind with that, I'm speaking of reading, I'm reading a book now called Biased. And we all have biases. It comes from our environments we grow up in. It comes from what we hear from, what we learn from our parents and things. So just understanding that we all have that already, but just being able to unlearn or to search inside to see, what biases you do have, and then being able to take those steps to remove that and learn a new way. So, just continuing with the education part of it, continuing to use my platform and having conversations like these where, people can sit and listen. And that for me is the biggest key in change, is just being open-minded to listening. Because something doesn't have to specifically happen to you for you to know that it's wrong or for you to have empathy. So I think through these conversations, you can learn some really powerful stories and ways to continue to stay involved. And, I think I'm honored that, and I'm really proud of Zach for hosting this panel, to be able to have this open dialogue and creating a space to be able to have that.
And before we wrap up, I'm going to say The New Jim Crow was one of the books, and that was the book where right afterwards I broke down, just having no understanding and just playing baseball. Like, I wake up trying to get hits on a regular basis. Not really educating myself up until now. And then as well as Between the World and Me, both are great reads. Both are really heavy, but I feel like, if you're up to the challenge, up to that burden, and I think that it'll definitely be worthwhile. Definitely. Here's my cat saying hello.
Your cat, yeah.
Yeah, it's one or the other.
Dr. Doolittle had a.
I love it.
Each.
I want to thank you for those recommendations, Josh, and I want to echo that we all should be reading these books. That this is for all of us to learn, and that's part of the message of this, is that, like, we care about each other, so we need to understand each other's experiences.
Lauren, I had no idea you like books. I had no idea you read.
I just love that we're having a really good time and talking about something really serious, and that's how you do it. Like you build friendships and you enjoy each other's company, and we learn and we work together. And I'm so grateful to have been brought in for this, Zach, and to you for making this all happen. To Josh, to Alicia, just a pleasure to spend this time with you. And I hope we will be together in person when it's possible. I'm inviting myself, just as we invited ourselves to the rabbi's house. I also wanted to note that the rabbi put in the chat, because we have some behind the scenes stuff going, that our city adopted the IHRA definition, and that's happened in other cities too. So that'll be something we can talk to in another program. And I'm going to give it back to you, Zach, just with gratitude to all of you. And you're doing righteous work. You're doing righteous work.
Thank you guys, everyone who worked on this panel today. Alicia, thank you. I'm looking at my phone now, talking to you. And JB, same with you. Lauren, everybody who was involved. JX, Rabbi, Arit for setting this up, AJC. I can't name everybody. One Hood, you all know on the flyer, and I appreciate you guys. These type of things, we need to make it normal, and we need to make it understood that we're going to get better each time. So, and we will, and we'll be back with this. So I appreciate everybody.